My idea of a dementia-friendly environment would be somewhere where people living with dementia can live in a community just as everyone else can. So the environment is set up so that they can go through daily activities as everyone else would, but in an environment that supports their needs.
I think it would be that people are informed about the condition of dementia and that there are very many types of dementia and it takes many forms, and I think that then the carers of those who have a family member with it can be fully supported.
It would be one where there is adequate support for the people who have to look after folks with Alzheimer's or other dementias.
I work in an industry where families struggle to understand dementia, so how can we expect society to, unless we make some huge changes? So yeah, I just think it'd be a lot more accepting for people to live independently, to participate in things that they really love.
Please take your seats. The presentation will be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you.
My idea of a dementia-friendly environment would be somewhere where people living with dementia can live in a community just as everyone else can. So the environment is set up so that they can go through daily activities as everyone else would, but in an environment that supports their needs.
I think it would be that people are informed about the condition of dementia and that there are very many types of dementia and it takes many forms, and I think that then the carers of those who have a family member with it can be fully supported.
It would be one where there is adequate support for the people who have to look after folks with Alzheimer's or other dementias.
I work in an industry where families struggle to understand dementia, so how can we expect society to, unless we make some huge changes? So yeah, I just think it'd be a lot more accepting for people to live independently, to participate in things that they really love.
Please take your seats. The presentation will be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here as the Grand Poobah of Alzheimer's. I just want to talk about my interview with Red this morning. So I don't know if colleagues are aware of Red, an ABC radio. It's a bit of a character, and I was kind of given a hint about that. But do you know what? He was a pussycat, and I really enjoyed the interview. So thank you, Marie, for the introduction. So my name is Gill, Ayling, and I'm the Head of Global Action Against Dementia. But for me, it's more than that. So I've been on this journey in the UK Department of Health since 2009. And that's a long time as a senior civil servant to be still on a policy area. You normally get moved around. And I think for me it's a vocation. And it gets into your bones and you get a passion for it, especially when you see real changes happening in your own city and across the country. And I think that's why it's been a pleasure really to do this work. So I'd like to share my views on the Global Dementia Challenge, the journey so far, and the importance of partnerships, because we can't do this on our own. And even as a civil servant, I recognised very early on that I needed to engage with charities, with health and care professionals, but most importantly, people with dementia and their carers. I couldn't have done that without their input. I also want to talk to you about how we can go further and faster. We should not become complacent about this disease. We don't have a cure yet, and therefore we need to still keep progressing. And then how can we ensure a sustainable future? My work also links to my own personal experiences of my family having dementia. So 2 of my grandmas had dementia, and I think dementia therefore becomes like a team sport because everybody in the family is affected. And what's great today is, even though I haven't got any current relatives with dementia, my daughter, who's 15, really now understands it. She has an awareness, she understands what it means. And I think it's really important to get that intergenerational support. So therefore, before I really start my presentation, I just wanted to get a view in the room of how many people know somebody with dementia, or have had dementia, or friends or family. So I've done this is my 3rd presentation, and what is really interesting is the amount of people it does affect. And when I look back to think about what was the trigger in England that took us over that kind of precipice of really making a difference with dementia, it was a YouGov poll that said 55s and above said that they were most scared of getting dementia above any other disease area. And I think for me, that was the thing that kind of motivated David Cameron and others to do something about dementia. So I really like this, this cartoon, because I think it depicts, some of the stigma around ageing. Our generation is ageing. So I've been in Sydney for 2.5 weeks with my family. So my daughter is 15, she's beautiful. She's taller than me, she's slim, her hair's down to her bottom. And as we're walking through Sydney, all the boys are all looking at her, and I think that's lovely. But for me, I'm thinking, things have changed here. And I just wanted to kind of give a quote from the late Terry Pratchett. Inside every old person is a young person wondering what happened. And I'm that person thinking, where did that go wrong? And it's great for my daughter. So I can relate to that quote from the late Terry Pratchett. I met Terry Pratchett in about 2010, and we were in our minister's office at the time, and Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. And he was about to come to number 10 to give a petition about research, because he was a real passionate advocate around research. And our minister said, shall we all go over? So we all went, yes, please. So we're in the cabinet room with Gordon Brown, and there was Terry Pratchett in his traditional hat, and he was amazing. And the passion that he had for dementia and dementia research, and also about saying you can still live well with dementia. I took that away from me from that very first day, and I thought that's always going to be with me, and I need to remember that people can still live with dementia, and that you need to give people with dementia care and respect. So, the baby boomers are not only contemplating their post-retirement lives, but frequently find themselves having to make difficult choices about care for their ageing parents as well, many of which will have dementia. If health and care systems fail to adequately meet the needs of people with dementia, then it's letting down a significant proportion of the ageing population. For me, I think the litmus test of our generation's willingness to face up to the challenge of an ageing population is whether now we take the decisions, now we do the difficult heavy lifting, to make sure that by then we're able to look after older people on our planet with dignity and respect. And that's what I will want as I grow older. So we talk about the facts and figures, and I suspect most of you know these, but I think they have to be repeated because their magnitude may well overwhelm society's ability to cope. So globally, in 2015, there's an estimated 47.47 million people living with dementia, and this will increase in 2050 to nearly 136 million. Here in Australia, there are nearly 343,000 people living with dementia, and this will increase to 400,000 in less than 10 years. In the UK, there are 850,000 people. With these rising millions, the economic impact of dementia is increasing relentlessly. Global cost of dementia through 2010 is at $604 billion US, or equivalent of 1% of the global GDP every year. Taking the US as an example, costs are expected to total 20 trillion over the next 40 years. This is extraordinary, and an amount that far exceeds the entire US national debt, so often decried by politicians. The truth is, we need to do more. We need to do far faster if we're able to avert the projected global burden of dementia becoming unsustainable. Can I ask if colleagues are aware of a lady called Margaret Chan? So Margaret Chan is the Director General of the World Health Organization. She's about 4'8" in her stocking feet and a pocket rocket and a formidable lady. And once she got behind dementia, we knew that we got her leadership and her endorsement. And I wanted to just tell you the quote that she gave at the March event in Geneva. I can think of no other disease that has such a profound effect of loss of function, loss of independence, and the need for care. I can think of no other disease so deeply dreaded by anyone who wants to age gracefully and with dignity. I can think of no other disease that places such a heavy burden on families, communities, and societies. I can think of no other disease where innovation, including breakthrough discoveries to develop a cure, is so badly needed. And I think that was a fantastic summary for her. It's just over a century ago Dr. Alzheimer's first described the distinctive plaques and tangles of the disease that bears his name. Over 100 years on, and there's still no means to cure or slow the progression. In 15 years, just 4 drugs have been developed, none of which slows progress, but I'll talk a little bit more about that and some hope that's coming through. One of the drugs, Eli Lilly, can I ask if colleagues are aware of the recent announcement around the Eli Lilly clinical trial? And do you know what was great yesterday? And it, again, was one of those moments in my life. I met a gentleman whose wife, he's on the clinical trial. And I said to him, how's it going? And he went, she's doing great. And we both instinctively reached out to each other, and I held his hand, and it was one of those moments where I just thought, there's hope, there's starting to be some hope. And he's seen her progression slow down. And this is for early onset dementia. I'm not saying, you know, it's going to cure everything, but it's the start. It's the start of the journey. For me, I think the war on cancer provides a real proxy for the challenges in the pathway to conquering a chronic disease. Like cancer, dementia presents us with a disorder so complex that we've barely scratched the surface in our efforts to understand its cause, progression, and targets for intervention. A half-century of progress on oncology shows us that breakthroughs will come from insights at the molecular level. Like cancer, dementia is many diseases, and multiple treatments will probably be needed. Progress will be made in small incremental advances, gathering momentum so that disease groups become amenable to treatment and cure over time. These all serve as useful lessons to inform our approach to dementia. And I recently commissioned some research in England around looking at different breakthroughs of different diseases. And one of the areas that really kind of highlighted to me the importance of different breakthroughs was HIV and AIDS. And when we had the politicians and the celebrities getting HIV and AIDS and saying that they'd got it, you saw a real change. You saw the media recognising HIV and AIDS. You had a movement that was much more positive about it, and then the funding started to come in, and that's when they got the disease-modifying drug. Whilst this complex work on a cure continues, there's reason for optimism, particularly for those of us in middle age concerned about our chances of developing dementia. And Nathan, I really loved your video, it was fantastic. And I wrote down this quote because this is what I'm going to talk about. Living life the healthy way, you have the choice to make it okay. And this is about what's good for your head is good for your brain. And I think there's evidence that you can significantly reduce the risk by making simple changes to your lifestyle. Diabetes, midlife obesity, midlife hypertension, each show evidence that the risk of dementia is decreased. In England, we've been working with the NHS on a health check for the modifiable risk factors for dementia. So at 55, you get a health check each year, and as part of that, the GP talks to you about the modifiable risk factors of CHD, of hypertension, of living a healthier life, and that can actually help to slow down the progression of dementia. And many people are not aware of that. And Hilary Doxford, who's a member of the World Dementia Council, who's got early on stage dementia, when we were discussing this at a World Dementia Council meeting, a number of the members were saying, well, where's the evidence? Where is it? And she put her hand up, and this is why it's great having her on the council, and she said, listen guys, if it even makes a slight change to people's progression, we should be telling people about this. You shouldn't hold this information to yourselves. We should be sharing it and getting diffusion and spread across the world. And then everybody just went, yeah, that makes sense. So as a result of that, we've been doing a lot around kind of risk reduction and prevention. When I was here in November with the World Dementia Envoy, we were really taken by the work that Australia's doing around this. And I just wondered if people are aware of the Ingenious Brain app from the Alzheimer's Australia and Bupa. Yeah. So it's simple to assess your risk by a quick check on your lifestyle, behaviour and medical conditions, and then to find out what you can do to lessen these risks. I'd really recommend that you go online and have a look at it. So, if we're to beat dementia, we must also work globally with nations, business, scientists from all over the world, working together as we do with cancer and with HIV and AIDS. And that's a quote from David Cameron from the G8 Summit in Dementia in December 2013. For me, that was a seminal moment. So that our Prime Minister used the presidency of the G8 to host the first ever Dementia Summit. And I was there in the morning with Professor Alistair Burns, who's the National Clinical Dementia Lead. And he and I have been on this journey since 2009. And we got into a room like this, a wee bit bigger, and there was nobody here. And there was all the banners up, and we knew that all the heads of state were arriving. So you can imagine being on this journey where you got nothing in 2009 to in 2013 where world leaders were coming, and we were absolutely beside ourselves with glee and optimism and enthusiasm, and we couldn't believe that we were here. And that's what I'm saying, it's a journey and it's taken us time, but through those small changes, through the advocacy of others, that's where we got to. It brought together health and science ministers from all over the G7 countries, international experts and researchers, loads of the global pharmaceutical industry. It was agreed that accelerating progress towards effective treatments and cures cannot be done by one country or organisation alone, but instead international cooperation and effort. The main ambition was to find a cure or disease-modifying therapy by 2025. I feel quite positive through the different clinical trials through Eli Lilly and a few others that we potentially might get a disease-modifying. The challenge was and remains great, but countries and organisations across the world have shown that in a short space of time, big steps can be taken and momentum on a global scale can be created with leadership, commitment and collaboration. More still needs to be done and we should not be complacent, but we should be proud of what we've achieved. And I'm really proud of what I've achieved since 2009. And I'm hoping through my presentation to talk to you about some of those outcomes. So, the journey so far. So we had the G7 event, and then I was asked to kind of take over. So I was leading on the Prime Minister's Challenge, which was fantastic. And I was asked to lead on ensuring that the declaration from the G7 was delivered. So I cogitated, I prodded, I blackmailed, I coerced, I've worked with a whole set of stakeholders to do this. And as a result, we had 4 big events across the world. They again showed you the advocacy and support from global leaders. We then appointed Dennis, who's the World Dementia Envoy in 2014. And I know Graham and Neil, you both met Dennis and Marie. He's fantastic. His mum had dementia. So yes, he's a billionaire, yes, he's a businessman, but he's really passionate about ensuring that we get a cure or disease-modifying therapy for dementia. But one of his quotes is, as we wait for the cure tomorrow, we must think about the care for today. There are 47 million people worldwide with dementia, so we can't forget about those. So we've been doing lots of work in England about how we can provide that care. We also have a World Dementia Council, and they are made up of the great and good. But for me, the most important member on that council is Hilary Doxford, who's got dementia. There are 21 countries have national plans in rating development. It's not in my gift or my position to say to Australia, you should have a strategy, but I would be encouraging the senior civil servants who are meeting on Monday to do so. Because I think if you have a framework that you can work towards, if you can do 1 or 2 things really well, in 10, 15 things really badly, it really makes a difference. We then had the first ministerial conference of dementia in Geneva in March 2015. So this was a year after the G7. There were actually 98 countries, Marie, that signed up to call for action. And for me, that was the first ever. Margaret Chan, the pocket rocket, said this is the first time ever any disease has been signed up to by as many countries, no other disease area. So that was amazing to have that event. So following that event, I've been working with the G7 nations and beyond to ensure that we maintain that momentum. I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the progress we've been doing in England or UK. So 850,000 people with dementia, costing 26 billion. In 2012, our diagnosis rate was around about 40%. And one of the things I've picked up in my travels around Australia is you don't have the data. So if you don't have data, you don't know what your baseline is, you don't know how to measure, and you don't know whether you've got progress. Neither did we. We didn't have any of that. But we worked with the GPs, we worked with health and care professionals, and we also did a bit of prodding and coercing through the Prime Minister. And as a result of that, we had a target, which was to increase the diagnosis rate by 2/3. We're now at about 63–64%. More people are receiving a diagnosis than ever before in England. And what we did with those organisations that weren't quite up to the standards of others, we didn't berate them. We didn't kind of poke fun at them or chastise them. We worked with them and said, look at those who are doing this, copy from them. And that's one of my biggest kind of advice, copy, copy, copy. I never write a submission, a briefing, without going online or checking if somebody else is doing it. Why should you do that? So I'm a great believer in copying. So we've used that to then ensure that nobody waits more than 6 weeks for initial assessment following a referral. There are 105 communities have signed up to be dementia friendly. So what does that mean? So we worked with people with dementia and their carers who told us they want to find their way around and feel safe in their local community or city. They want to access local facilities that they're used to, banks, shops, cafes, cinemas, post offices. And I've got a great story about a gentleman, Trevor Jarvis, who's got vascular dementia, who he and his wife do a lot of events and he gets up to speak. And he said, I want to remain independent and keep my money. I don't want Anne to pilfer my money off from me just because I've got dementia. He's really funny. So he worked with Lloyds Bank and said, I can't remember my PIN code. Can you help me? And they said, yes. Why don't we change your PIN code to a signature? So now what Lloyds Bank have done across the whole of England, they've said to people with dementia that they will work with them to ensure that they can bespoke the way that they get their money out of the bank so they can remain independent and have those freedoms. And I think that's one of the true outcomes and the benefits of a dementia-friendly community, is that if you get businesses, if you get society, and it gets into the DNA of the cities and communities, that's where you make the difference. They also said they want to maintain their social networks and make them still feel part of the community. Why would we not individually want that to happen? You know, I get a lot of pleasure from being with my friends and my family. So if I was to get dementia, why wouldn't I still want to be able to do that? If you get the opportunity, I would have a look at the York dementia-friendly community. It's called City Without Walls. And I don't know how many people have been to York, but it's a beautiful city in the north of England, which is where I live. And they've been working with the Joseph Brownrigg Foundation to ensure that their city is dementia-friendly. One of the others we've been doing is Dementia Friends. Can I ask how many people in the room are Dementia Friends? Okay, so this is my badge. This is the Dementia Friends badge. So I went to Japan about 3 years, and they had called caravan mates, and their emblem was 2 donkeys. Don't ask me why. But it doesn't matter what the emblem is. It's about encouraging society and individuals to recognise the signs of dementia and to support in very simple ways. They now have 8 million dementia friends. We have over 1 million in England, and it's now been adopted by Canada. I know Australia want to pick it up, Germany, France. It's a movement. And as a dementia friend myself, I can also train other people. It takes an hour, sometimes less. You can go online to do it as well. And what I brought with me today is the kind of pamphlet that we hand out as well as the badge. And I'm going to test you today. So one of the things that we do is we say to people, tell us the 5 things you should know about dementia. Come on, what do you think those 5 things are?
Anyone can suffer from it.
Yeah. Anything else?
Forgetfulness.
Yeah.
It's not just hungry, it's all.
Exactly, yeah. So let me read them out for you. So it's not a natural part of growing old. I think that's the biggest misconception. It's caused by disease of the brain. People don't know it's a disease. It's not just about losing your memory. It can affect thinking, communicating, and doing everyday tasks. It's possible to live well with it. I met Christine Bryden yesterday, I don't know if colleagues are aware. She's now written her 2nd book. Amazing, amazing lady. So she's managing the disease, she's working really well with her friends and her family, and she's providing that support to others. I think that's just amazing. And there's more to a person than dementia. If Gill Ayling was to get dementia, I hope people would know that I fell run, I've had a good career, I've had a lovely family, and I've got parts of me that are me. It's not just the dementia. See beyond the dementia. One of the first campaigns we did, we had people with dementia saying, I have dementia, but I also have life. And I think that's really important. So a few other things I just thought I'd tell you about. So in Dementia Friends, when we do the training, we do the penny. So for me, a penny I see every single day. So we say to people, okay, here's the picture of the penny, the front and the back. Tell us what you think is on there. And you've got a minute. And everybody's like, oh my God, yeah, I see it every day. Is it this, is it that? And people, you can see them getting frustrated. And the whole point of that exercise is to say, it's the simple things that you see and do every day that you can't remember. And that's what happens to people with dementia. And therefore the frustration is because of that. And therefore if you recognise why they're frustrated, you can help support them. The other thing that we do with Dementia Friends is we say, go away and do one small thing. And one of the things that I've done is I live in a small village in the north of England, and I went down to see the postmaster. So we have lots of people in my village, and I just wanted to go down and say to them, would they let me train them to become more dementia aware? And they said yes. And that was great. So that was the thing I put back into my community, and that's what we ask people to do. So it's just the simple things. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It's just helping somebody in a need and being aware of what they need. We've trained over 500,000 NHS staff and over 100,000 social care staff. The big thing that I'm really proud of, and we're just about to go live with it shortly, is we've been working with the Scouts and the Brownies. So the Scouts and the Brownies in the UK, and I'm sure you must have similar over here, are working towards a dementia-friendly badge. And I think intergenerational is so, so important, because actually if we educate our children, then they'll be more aware, there'll be less stigma, and they'll understand how to cope with it better. And I was really taken when I was in Sydney on Monday, my first presentation, of Kids for Dementia, I think it's called. Kids for Dementia video. And I think what was really interesting, and my daughter was in the audience, is there was 2 girls who were 15 and their dads both had dementia. And it's quite a sad video, but then it changes to one of hope. Because the kids go, yeah, it's really sad that they can't recognise me, but you know what, I love them still, and you know, I want to spend time with them, and you know, I just want to make sure that they're okay. So it left you that feeling of hope, which I think is really important. I've just kind of showed you this bit of a collage, and I was impressed to hear that Tony Abbott recently left his signature Budgie Smugglers, and I'm quoting the Australian Mail, and brave the cold to catch some waves for a dementia fundraising initiative recently, Wipe Out Dementia. We've also seen Barack Obama and also other leaders. I suppose what I'm trying to show from this kind of collages is that if you get political advocacy and endorsement, it really does open the doors. I'm now just going to give you a little bit of flavour of what I've learned through my travels across the world. I cannot tell you how lucky I am in the job that I have to experience different things going on in different countries and then to share that with others. So when I was in Japan, I met up with a robot called Pepper. Has anybody heard of Pepper the robot? So she's about knee-high. I'm calling her she because, you know, I think that's important. She's being placed in care homes or people's own homes. She has a TV in the middle. So it plays music, plays stories, and she can also recognise changes in people's behaviour. So you can feed back to families and say, actually, you know, that I can see changes in them, you might want to kind of think about what's happening. And also one of the things that I've found, and I've just done a study in the UK, is actually music is really important. So I go around a number of care homes in England, and the music's moved from Vera Lynn to Rod Stewart. I suspect when I go into a care home, it'll be Miley Cyrus or, you know, Taylor Swift. But what I'm saying is music's really, really important. We just saw that with the video. I can be transported back to my youth. You know, I'm off to see Duran Duran in November in England, and I know I can just close my eyes and I will be in that club with my hair backcombed with all my pals, you know. But what it does, it makes me feel happy. It makes me transported to a place that I remember. And I think that's really important. Life stories are also really important. So some of the bad stories I've heard in England from GPs is, why tell anybody that they have a diagnosis when there's no cure? And I've really challenged that and said, listen, there may not be a cure, but I know that by telling people and their families what's happening to them, they can learn more about the disease, they can understand what's going to happen, and they can make decisions and choices before they can't make those decisions and choices. And why would we take that away from anybody? So I hope that if I was to get dementia and I have my wishes are taken forward by my daughter and my husband, and I think that's really, really important. I also was blessed when we were in Australia in November to see the virtual dementia experience. Are people aware of the virtual dementia experience? And it's incredible. So it basically shows you a house and a person with dementia through their eyes. And you don't quite get what's going on because they're moving away from things, they're feeling distressed at certain noises. But then what they do is they show you why. They take you through the eyes of the person with dementia and what they're seeing. So what I didn't know is a mat could be seen as a whole. So in the virtual dementia experience, you see the person with dementia moving away from it. And the person, the carer, is going, what are you doing? What you know? And actually it's those small things. So once you know that, you can help support that person with dementia. I also think we de-skill people with dementia because we think that they can't do things. So one of the things we do in the Dementia Friends is say, If they can no longer recognise a kettle, label it, it's not hard. You know, they can still read. Think about the small things you can do that don't de-skill, which means they can live longer in their own homes. And I think the virtual experience does that. So it helps carers, it helps health and care professionals understand what it means. I'm now going to show you a video that I'm really, really proud of that we did in England. We were pleased to work with Paul McCartney, who allowed us to use his song, and you'll see what I mean. And this is about the movement, this is about Dementia Friends, and how you can make those differences by being aware. And the lady that opens it has dementia, and I think that's really important. Now, I'm going to see whether, because every single presentation I've not going to manage to do it.
Hi, I'm Gina, and I've been diagnosed with early stage dementia, and I'd like to sing you a song. What would you think if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. A little try with a little help from my friends. What do I do when my love is away? Doesn't worry to be alone. How do I feel by the end of the day? Are you sad because you're on your own? No, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Do you need anybody? I need somebody to love. Do you need anybody? I want somebody to love. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. Yes, I get by with a little help from my friends. A little help from my friends. 1 in 3 of us over 65 will get dementia. There's no cure yet. So to become a dementia friend and find little ways you can help people like me, please go to dementiafriends.org.uk now. Thank you.
It always makes me feel really proud of what we've achieved in England. So this is our 4th advert that we've done. That went out prime time. And when I mean prime time, I mean Coronation Street. So. And I think that was really important. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we need to go further and faster. I did have a video of the Bionic Man, and this was my husband's idea because when I was a kid, I used to love the Bionic Man. And I remember on the opening video, and it talks about you can go further, you can go faster, and just the music made me think about it. I like to think I am the Bionic Man when I'm doing my running, but I don't think I'm that fast. So dementia doesn't recognise national boundaries, status or wealth, and neither will solutions. No one country, organisation or sector can solve dementia on its own. We need to learn lessons from other disease groups. We need a commitment to tackling the science. We need a flexible and responsive regulatory environment. And we need to move from G7 to global. There's a danger that we'll fall over the cliff edge unless momentum is achieved. I've talked a lot around the care costs and the cure costs. I think there needs to be a balance. I think we need to see investment in care. I think that care can be anything. So when I talked about Pepper the robot, when I tweeted back that picture of that robot to England, I had a really bad reaction. because people were saying you shouldn't replace face-to-face, intimate care with a robot. And I never said that was what I was trying to encourage. What I'm saying is we need new innovations, we need technology, and we also need the traditional, and both can help support people with dementia. The pricing of breakthroughs. We've just invested $100 million into the Dementia Discovery Fund, and it's a public-private partnership between industry and the UK government. And I'm hoping to encourage other contributions, potentially from Australia, into that, because this is about the preclinical stage. How do we get the assets? How do we start getting those assets that can come through the dementia pathway so it comes out with a drug? We need to improve care, as I said. We need to have more open science. We did a recent review of it's called attrition analysis, and basically what that means is trials that have failed. And what we find through science is that if you share each other's data, one person's disaster is another person's opportunity, and we really need to do that more in the dementia science environment, and we don't do it. We also need to think about stigma and the rights. There's a great presentation from a guy called Martin Prince, who's looked at the kind of disease modifying and the risk reduction issues around dementia. And one of the things he's looked at is low to middle income developing countries. As they're surviving HIV and AIDS, their populations are ageing, and you can see the ticking time bomb. And this is why we're working with low to middle income and developing countries, so we can also start supporting them. I'll talk a little bit about what my new role is. I'm trying to ensure that the work we've been doing over the last year continues. And when I get back to England, I'll be there about a week, and then I'm going to New York, where we are handing over the kind of responsibility from the UK government to the World Dementia Council. And they are really keen to keep this work going forward. And in my meetings with the senior civil servants in Australia on Monday, I'm going to be inviting those civil servants to think about Australia leading on risk reduction and prevention, and also to become a member of the World Dementia Council. And I think with that will become advocacy and support, and hopefully political endorsement. So I really love this cartoon, because no matter how much we may want it to change doesn't just happen. And I'm sorry, I don't believe in magic. And 2009 today, I think I've got a lot of experience around how I think things can happen. And I think there are 5 things. So the first one is political endorsement. Without it, or if it's half-hearted, you'll be sidelined. The value of a committed, passionate politician leading from the front and promoting the change is immeasurable and creates energy, buy-in and advocacy. And I've seen that in spades through our Prime Minister. His personal involvement has significantly raised the profile, both domestically and internationally, and encouraged other leaders to identify dementia as a priority, and has resulted in additional funding. So in the early days, whilst we had the National Dementia Strategy, it was good, but then once we got his profile, it's the only health personal priority of his. And as a consequence of that, it opens doors, and it gets you where you can't normally get to. Performance management is really, really important. Without it, translating political and organisation ambition, irrespective of the energy behind it, into action, the front line will prove difficult. No matter the amount of intellectual or clinical buy-in, unless you're going to baseline, then measure progress, there will be too many opportunities to do nothing. Remember, you do what you measure. And I think the real evidence is that is through the dementia diagnosis. So we had a target, we had a measure, we had our baseline, we had our data, and we could see what we were doing. And then we put that into practice, and we helped those outlying organisations. Organisational priority. Change must be a priority for every organisation, top to bottom, national, local, clinical and operational. If it isn't, it'll become very clear very quickly. When the going gets tough, people and organisations will pull in different directions. Funding is also critically important, both symbolically, if it's a priority, it's worth funding, and operationally. Often overstretched frontline services may want to change, but simply do not have the resource to do so. It may be a direct allocation, a performance incentive, or a penalty. Either way, you do need funding. However, I have seen changes happen with very little funding. So we've been doing things in hospitals around how do you ensure that staff within hospitals know that the individual's got dementia. So have people heard of the Butterfly campaign? So the Butterfly campaign identifies a person with dementia in hospital. They also get different crockery because people with dementia forget to eat and they forget to drink and they become dehydrated. And the staff within the hospital who are helping to support them need to know that. And they need to say, have you eaten today? Have you drunk? Also what they've done is they've changed the colours of the walls. So if you see the walls around here, for a person with dementia, sometimes that's not very good. So they have different colours. They've set up gardens. So there's one hospital in Manchester that Dennis and I visited recently. It's got a dementia-friendly garden, which is beautiful. And a care home where I also went to recently, people with dementia actually do the garden because that's what they've done previously. A gentleman who was also in this care home used to go every night to the pub. And I think he was worried that his life would change going into a care home. So what the care home did was they said, okay, twice a week, we'll get a taxi to pick you up and a taxi to bring you back. So he can still see his friends. And he was so proud. He had about 5 medals of darts that he'd won over the last year, and he had all these medals around him, and he was so proud. And I think it's about respecting the person with dementia, seeing beyond the dementia and saying, what can we do to kind of maintain your lifestyle but keep you safe as well? Media engagement is often overlooked. So the Dementia Friends campaign that I showed you, as a result of that, that has resulted in clinical trials going up to about 70%. We've seen dementia diagnosis increase. We've seen new things coming through. One of the new things we're trying to do in England is post-diagnostic support. So once somebody gets a diagnosis, I think people just think, right, that's it, we've sorted you. But actually that journey from the start of getting their diagnosis is really important that you understand what's going to happen. So through post-diagnostic support, we're investing in dementia advisors that navigate the individual as and when they need it. So in the early stages, you might not need very much, but as you're going through the disease, you and your carer and your family will need more information. And instead of seeing 10, 15 different organisations, you speak to that one person. And I think that will help people live independently for longer. I'm kind of going to leave you with one last thought. So there are so many people out there who will tell you that you can't. What you've got to do is turn around and say, watch me. And on Monday, there was a really fantastic quote. Dementia isn't contagious, but hope is. Thank you, everyone.